So you train hard and you condition hard, but you still conk out 20 minutes into the game. Well, what's good in having a great engine if you haven't got air in your tires? And this is the difference between anaerobic and aerobic capacity and where you're going wrong. The VO2 max is a way to test this, the anaerobic aerobic capacities you have. It basically shows your oxygen utilization, your aerobic capacity, and where the anaerobic capacity takes over because you can no longer breathe properly, breathe efficiently enough that you can get enough O2 in to create ATP, ATP being the currency of the cell. That's something to remember for this next bit. So when we talk anaerobic and aerobic, so just to shorten it and make it easy for me to write on this whiteboard, is when we're talking about anaerobic, we're talking about glycogen to produce ATP, and when we're talking about aerobic, we're talking about using O2 to achieve ATP. So we'll denote that as such. So for glycogen, and we've got O2. So this is the difference. This is your aerobic capacity at the top and your anaerobic capacity at the bottom. Now, when you train hard, you do HIIT training and all this other crazy stuff, your hard training, it should be hard, and your easy training should be easy. Now, what do I mean by this? Your easy training should be zone 2 training, training where you can run, jog, and speak to the next person in the conversation without having over breathlessness during that conversation. And glycogen production, your anaerobic capacity, should be when you're pushing so hard, you can't speak, you can't breathe, you're questioning life, you might throw up, the world's spinning more than it should, the ground's not even anymore. That is when you know you're pushing hard. But what you want for your endurance, for a great engine, so you can produce a great performance all game, is you want to make sure that even when you drift out of O2, of an aerobic capacity, because you will, because you're going to push yourself, because you're performing at your best, you want to make sure that this level never just drops off. And at some point, you want to have this level, and this level will go up. But what you don't want is this big drop off here. So this big drop off in aerobic capacity really shows how inefficient the system is in terms of your breathing, your mechanics, the way you're moving, because you can't keep this level from dropping all the way off. Ideally, what you want is, let me just get rid of this, is this level to just level out. So it doesn't drop off to that such extreme, but it maybe drops down to 7% of your energy production is then from O2, and the rest of that percentage, that 93%, is coming from glycogen. And this is the difference between good and bad aerobic anaerobic ratios in terms of you as an athlete, is you want to make sure that your drop off of aerobic capacity, which it will drop off at some point, doesn't drop off to nothing. It drops off to around 7%, maybe 5%, maybe 3%, depending on you as an athlete, you as a person. And that brings us to our next point. When it comes to training your VO2 max, or it comes to improving endurance or sprint endurance, depending on sports and stuff, whatever you may be doing, this is where individualized training plans need to be implemented. So you need to find things like your own max heart rate, your resting heart rate, your heart rate zones. Now, heart rate zones isn't something to live and die by in terms of training, but it can be a handy tool for certain aspects of your training. So if you know your zone 2 heart rate, you can then go for a jog, have it on your watch, and keep that heart rate in that plus or minus 0.2 heartbeats to keep yourself in that training zone for longer. But then you can also move out of that and go into your hard training and use things like Norwegian 4x4s and other HIIT trainings, Tabata, all those kinds of different modalities that you have in high intensity, but you separate them out. So your high intensity is high and your low intensity is low. It's not just going for a jog around the block is your low intensity, or going for a walk is the low intensity. It's having the intention within that low intensity that it is easy, but is stressing the system in a minor way. And then you have hard training where you stress the system in a major way. The problem I see in athletes when you do these kinds of training plans, and this might not be you, but I'm saying for a lot of people, it's tough because it's not sexy, it's not glamorous, It's not running 500 miles on Instagram. It's not sweating it out, lifting heavy weights in the gym, and it looks cool, and your muscles are glistening and shining, and you look like you're breaking a sweat, but you've done some crazy stats. Low intensity impacts you in a great way, but low intensity is low intensity. It's not glamorous. It's not Instagram social media worthy, and that's probably why it gets looked over a lot, and why it's probably not studied a lot and looked at a lot in terms of athlete performance. And this is, I don't want to say an ego, but for some athletes, it's going to be an ego thing that you're like, you can do more. And so you think that light training, easy training is actually not contributing enough to your performance. And so quite often, and something you'll hear me say a lot if you're a client of mine and I'm training you, is when we go through breathing programs and when we go through programs like this to improve these aspects of your performance, is it's quality over quantity. And just because training every day, and especially going hard in training because you think that's how you're going to expand aerobic capacity and anaerobic capacity, this battering of the system day after day, year after year, leads to overtraining and leads to other health related problems in your day-to-day life, but it also increases that injury risk in terms of your performance, because your body starts to compensate for the breakdown in certain aspects and then has compensatory mechanisms elsewhere, which lead to poor biomechanics. This can lead to then poor breathing, which leads to poor biochemistry. And so you have things like fatigue set in, you have things like mental health issues, and you also increase the injury risk in game, in performance. So these are different aspects and should be trained differently. Look at the description below, because I'll put a few more breakdowns of programs and things you can do to improve the VO2 max. And we'll go back over there in the description what light means and what hard means. So before you go, make sure to like and subscribe this video, because that's the best way for me to see that this is getting out there to people. And make sure to comment so I can see what you think about this kind of content, or see what you think about this kind of video, and give me ideas for more stuff you want to see, because I'll happily make that for you. So I'll see you all soon, and make sure to like, comment, and subscribe on your way out.